Hi, I'm Stéphane Panier, co-founder and CEO of Banter, and I'm here with Matty Staudt, professor at the Academy of Arts University, where he teaches broadcasting, and also former producer and host at WJFK in Washington, D.C., NEW in New York City, and Alice Radio in San Francisco. Welcome, Matty.
Great introduction. You nailed it.
Wow.
Good job.
So this is the first of a series of 4, maybe 5 banters, conversations that we're going to have about how to make the best interviews and how to make the best of it.
Yes, we will do our best, but I'm anxious to see how you do interviewing. I'm not used to being I'm already flummoxed. I'm not used to being on this end of the things, being asked questions. So,
well, this is one of my first few interviews, so bear with me. So I'd like to introduce the topic. This is our first one, so we're going to ask the first question, which is why do an interview at all in the first place?
Well, I think you're doing one of them right now. You bring in a voice that has authority or knowledge about something that maybe you don't, or maybe can bring in a more, a more expert opinion about something. Like if you do a podcast about dinosaurs, and you know a lot about dinosaurs, you're still not going to know as much as a paleontologist from New York University. So that's one of the main reasons that you do an interview, is to bring on somebody that's got some expert opinion, can add something to the show. And then also in general, with podcasts, a lot of the time it's just you talking, or you and the same person talking. So it's really good to bring in another voice, because people get sick of just listening to you. So it's nice. It gives a lot of a lot more color to the show.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, definitely we pick the right person to talk to us about how to interview. So you're the expert. I'm here just to prop you up and try to ask the questions that the audience would like me to ask.
Well, one of the other things that you do an interview for, not only just to have the voice in, is you want to promote. I mean, because in our world of podcasting and blogging, that's our advertisement. We advertise by promotion. So by having me on, you're hoping that I'm then going to talk about Banter or whatever company that, or your podcast. And to do that, did a great job of that was Mark Maron. When Mark started the WTF podcast, Mark Maron showed up on every podcast imaginable. I mean, if there was a podcast and he had time, he would do it. And he quickly built this reputation early on in the podcasting community that, this is a guy that's serious about podcasting. He's seriously here to help out other podcasters, and he's a great guest. So, those are things that are good to build up, because when you interview somebody, not only you having them on your show, you're also kind of trying out for them that maybe they'll have you be on their show for something, to help promote it.
So you kind of double your follower. I mean, the number of followers or people that may be interested in listening to you.
Well, and people that that want to find you, that don't know how to find you, or know that you're out there. So, good podcasters are good networkers, because that's the business. That's how we get around. And, the more shows you can be on, the more people that are retweeting your interviews, and then people, then they're seeing the interviews and going, that seems like a really cool show. That guy's a great host. Maybe I'll go download his podcast this week. And hopefully, it helps. I mean, I notice when I do my metrics after I do a podcast, when it's obvious when you do your metrics and you look at, okay, so last week I had Aisha Tyler on. Aisha Tyler's got a huge following. I know every time I have Aisha Tyler on, I get a giant spike in my metrics, and it usually carries over for the next week. So, it's good business, if nothing else, to do interviews.
Okay. So good business, bring another voice, an expert voice. Anything else?
Well, if you can, star power. Oftentimes I will book a guest that I know is not a good interview. I'm going to use an example, Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas is terrible interview. He just rambles, but it sounds really cool to say I have Kirk Douglas on my show. Yeah. So you have to weigh whether, sometimes, you want to have people on your show who maybe don't have star power, who are great interviews, but there's nothing wrong with having somebody on your show who's a terrible interview, who has great star power. because it also lends credence to your show. And one other trick that I used to do, even if I knew a guest was canceling, I would still go ahead and promote it. I know that that's bad business, but because most people don't even remember if you had the guest on or not. They just remember that you were going to have the guest on. So it got to be on one of my podcasts. It got to be a kind of a joke at the end of every podcast where I would rattle off a list of guests that we were having on next week, all of which would, never come on the show. But it does. It really helps. People associate, wow, that show has this person on, then that must be a pretty big show.
Right. And eventually you do have to have the guests show up, or some of the guests, so that you don't lose total credibility in what you're saying.
No, you always have to have the guests show up. Yeah, don't listen. Yeah. That's bad advice. Don't listen to that.
Okay. What else? Anything else you can think of off the top of your head right now?
Well, I just think in general, the more you interview and the more interviews you have on, the better you get at it, and the more that you become a noted person for interviews. I'll use Mark Maron for an example again. Mark Maron is a great interviewer. He'd had some, done some radio for Air America. But when he started doing his podcast and he started going on so many podcasts, I mean, you could listen and hear how he became a better interviewer by going on shows and by having guests on so much and having different kinds of guests. And as we go through this Banter series with you and I, we're going to talk about how to prepare for a guest so that you have a good interview. The actual doing the interview, which is really important. A lot of people, they book a guest, they have questions ready, and then when the interview comes, they don't really know what to do at that point. And then also, we'll talk a little bit about, how to promote the interview after you've done it. Because as we said, you have an interview on to get promotion and to do promotion. But if you don't know what to do with that interview and how to promote it, then it's all for naught. So those are all important things that you and I will talk about.
Okay. So the next one is going to be, now that we hopefully have convinced everybody that interviews are good and great value, the next thing is how to get interviewers to come and join the show. Right?
Yes, that is not right. That's the hard one, and we'll get to that next.
So now, Professor, how do I conclude this?
Well, I mean, Stefan, you could have started with an icebreaker, a little get to know me kind of thing. So I'm going to give you an F for that, which we'll get to. We haven't gotten to that point in the series yet. So
no, we haven't. So.
Okay. How to end this. So I would end this with a tease. So the tease is next time we talk to Matty, we're going to talk about how to book that interview.
All right. Great. You said it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.